Hey everyone, welcome back to Digital Foundry, or as we often refer to it, work. It's DF Direct Weekly number 107 here. Plenty to discuss this week. Huge amount of news topics. Joining me first of all to talk about it, Oliver Mackenzie.
Hey Rich, how's it going? Second week in a row.
And Alex Battaglia.
Yes, I'm returned. I am somewhat healthier. Almost 100%.
John's away on holiday, so let's kick off with the first news topic. So this one has been dominating discussion for the best part of a few days now at the time of filming. Essentially, Bethesda Studios ZeniMax have confirmed that Redfall, the big exclusive for May for Xbox and PC, is going to launch only with a 30 FPS quality mode on the console, and we're expecting to see a 60 frames per second performance mode update at some point. There's been no idea of how long we're going to be waiting for that. It's fair to say that the reaction online from both Xbox diehards and casual gamers has been less than stellar, less than positive. Going to go to you first of all for your thoughts on this one, Oliver. It's not a good look for a major first-party exclusive in a world where we've not really had so many of them.
No, it feels a bit ominous to me, especially seeing as all the preview material that we saw for this game was at 60 FPS, stretching all the way back to the game's gameplay reveal and the Microsoft Summer 2022 showcase, and of course earlier this year that Microsoft Direct showcase. And all the footage so far that I've seen has showcased like screen space artifacts, which makes me think, that is a realistic target for console platforms. And Microsoft has also done a really good job, I think, with their first-party efforts of showing off footage that's probably in the ballpark for console footage, even though it's being demoed on PC, like with Forza Motorsport last year. I know Alex spotted some reconstruction artifacts in that, and with Starfield, they've been showing it off pretty much at 30. They've been showing a little bit of 60, but mostly at 30. So it's a little bit of a weird situation, and I can't help but be a little bit concerned, just because my feeling, I don't know if this is your feeling as well, but my feeling is the game probably was targeting 60 FPS on consoles, at least as an option, until probably relatively recently. So it makes me a little bit concerned about the game, but hopefully it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, the footage that we've seen, as you said, has all been 60 frames per second, pretty much locked. Previews have all been carried out on PC. Indeed, on the Xbox Store page for the game, up until recently, it was being advertised / marketed as a 60 frames per second game. But fundamentally, in the year of our Lord, 2023, the concept of a current generation shooter launching without 60 frames per second support makes it very much an outlier. And the question is, why this is happening, and we can only really speculate at this point. Yeah. So, Alex, I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I mean, every time we've spoken to a developer about, how they create a console game that's targeting 60 frames per second, it's all about, very stringent budgets, targeting 60 frames per second from the get-go. Yeah. And yet here we are a couple of months from launch, and to suddenly see this whole experience pared back just to a 30 FPS quality mode, it's kind of baffling, right?
So I asked people about this before, specifically in regards to Unreal Engine 4, which this title is using. And they've said in the past that a lot of things in the middle of the production process that are inefficiently running through Blueprint, for example, will then later on in the process be brought into more performant code. This is something that was that I heard behind the scenes is that partially happened on Gotham Knight, is that like they brought back some performance by moving things from Blueprint into more performant code. And this usually happens towards the end of a product, like before shipping, and it's one of the last hurdles to get that CPU performance up. In this case, the fact that we were seeing 60 FPS footage beforehand, which was obviously running on PC, combined with the fact that they're saying they're going to bring out a 60 FPS mode later, gives me the feeling that this was maybe part of the production process and they actually did have a plan and it was going to be targeting and running at 60 FPS at some launch date. But then the launch date is actually not attainable to do that in the time frame, and they're pushing it out essentially early. It's not necessarily ready. And that's what it comes off to me. Like, it doesn't sound very nice to me to say that they're going to be pushing out an unfinished product, but it kind of comes across that way. There are other reasons why this could be 30 that don't that aren't the reason I just gave. One could be that the fact that on PC, they've advertised ray tracing. The footage they've shown off so far doesn't have any evidence of it, but if they are using ray tracing, that would be a good, for example, CPU-related reason to not be hitting 60 FPS in a good way. It's pretty rare to see a 60 FPS ray trace game on console due to the CPU limitations, because you can always scale resolution really far down.
You would expect a performance mode not to have ray tracing active, though, right?
Anyway, usually. But, other things, these all go to the game is unfinished territory. But yeah, there's always, you have these budgets, but you're arting up the game, and then you do a optimization pass. Well, what if they haven't finished the optimization passes to get to the certain areas of the game up to 60 yet? Well, then they need to wait till they get that done and then bring out the mode in a patch where it's a consistent 60 the whole way through. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons for this. I just think it's another big L for Microsoft at this time. Just where I thought they were on Hi-Fi Rush was so good, so polished, so great, that I was hoping that the next couple titles that would come out would reflect that experience. And a 30 FPS shooter, I don't know. First person games, I don't think feel very good at 30, usually. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in a supporter question here. This is Cedric Weber. Redfall is getting offline mode post-launch. Redfall is getting performance mode post-launch. I'm tired of this. I can't name an industry which is so far away from their consumers. We as gamers getting kicked around like a play ball. Your opinion on this? Thanks for the greatest content on YouTube. Greetings from Frankfurt.
Hello.
Neighbour of John there.
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting way of getting to the fundamental point here, which is that the signs are that the game isn't finished, right? And if they can't get out an experience on day one that's in line with their original vision, surely the correct decision would be to delay it. But what if it can't be delayed owing to we've had a dearth of first-party AAA content from Xbox. The pressures to actually ship must be huge here. So I guess that's my question, Oliver. Do you think they should have delayed it, or do you think they should do these incremental updates in the way that it looks like we're going to be getting the game now?
Well, personally, I'm a little bit nervous just even about the 30 FPS mode that they're going to be shipping, because prior Arcane titles have had issues with 30 FPS caps, like Deathloop and whatnot. And personally, I think that I'm going to either be waiting to play this game. I was excited for it. I'm either going to be waiting to play it on console or playing it on PC. But then that also kind of leaves a corresponding concern, which is that if the game is CPU limited on console with a Ryzen 3600 equivalent CPU, is it going to really perform that well on most PCs without a really high-end CPU? Is it going to be a game that's going to struggle to hit 60 on standard mid-range CPU hardware? I don't know. It's a little bit of a, there's some additional concerns on top of that, right?
Well, absolutely, because there's so many concerns with any Unreal Engine 4 title that launches at this point. Yeah, Alex is still deep within
battered.
his Star Trek The Next Generation Shades of Grey flashback sequence where it's just one battering after another. PC gaming this year hasn't improved.
It has.
Arguably, it's got worse than 2022, which some might say was one of the worst years ever for PC gaming. And now we're going into every single PC launch in a state of trepidation and genuine concern as to whether the game's going to ship in a decent state. What do you think about PC?
I think here, what Oliver said is right on the nose, where if they're not shipping, that means either the optimization pass isn't done specifically for console settings on the console there, or the entire game hasn't had an optimization pass, and maybe the settings that we'll see on PC won't allow you to get a good 60 FPS anyway, no matter what, kind of like Gotham Knights was, right? Where you could turn on those settings all you want, and you'd get maybe like 5 to 10% more performance back on the CPU, but the entire game was unoptimized, so it wouldn't really help. I'm worried about that situation, on top of the fact that if it is being pushed early, maybe because PC requires other special considerations, shader pre-compilation, you need to make sure you're loading memory correctly. If you push out a game early, maybe these things are still not actually in like a gold shipping position yet, and you'll have memory issues at launch, crashes, I don't even know, like traversal stutter that doesn't need to be there if you actually did the memory management right for the launch date. There's a lot of things that happen here that where I would agree with the poster that I'm actually pretty sick and tired of having to go through a patch cycle of 10 really quick incremental patches that occur over the course of 2 to 3 months, just for games to be in what would previously be a shippable, like the shippable like quality.
Yeah, okay, Alex, I get it. We'll talk about The Last of Us Part 1 later. All
We'll
right.
talk about the
Yeah.
I think, mitigating argument here is that typically arcane games always run better on PC than on consoles.
Yeah,
so,
they've been good
maybe
there,
it's simply the case that,
usually.
it's been a PC-focused title. That wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility. But the signals being sent out by this are certainly concerning. And also the timing. I think from my perspective, it sounds like a marketing decision to get the bad news out now, so it doesn't become the central point of discussion at review time, which I suspect it probably will anyway, but it is what it is, right? I guess there's also the concept of, the whole strategy from the Microsoft side. I mean, we've had also from Bethesda this week, Ghostwire Tokyo, which, Oliver, you're taking a look at now, and it's actually turning out to be quantifiably worse than the existing PlayStation 5 version, which in itself wasn't great to begin with. Can you give us some potted highlights there?
Yeah, so I guess the basic way that the PS5 version works is none of the modes are really locked, except for the 30 FPS quality mode. And they all have big performance issues. And then the game uses sub 4K resolutions with FSR1 and has input lag. So that's like the basic setup. And relative to that, the Xbox Series X version is basically worse in most respects with respect to the headline figure. So the RT reflections are somewhat lower quality. There are shadow alignment bugs with the RT shadows. The resolutions are pretty similar for the most part, but the quality mode has a moderately lower resolution than PlayStation 5, it looks like. And performance is typically in the range of 5 to 10% lower than PlayStation 5 in the same scene. And then on Series S, if you go over to Series S, it only has 2 modes, performance and quality. Neither have ray tracing, which is kind of the signature visual feature of that game. So you lose that entirely. And the performance mode runs sub 60. So in general, it runs worse than PlayStation 5. And Series S is sort of a bit of a mess. So it's a really weird situation. And yeah, just not really what you would expect from what is now a Microsoft first-party development studio.
Yeah, it sends the message to me that on the one hand, I guess it's a good thing, which is that Microsoft isn't micromanaging these studios. But on the other hand, you would expect them to be held to a higher standard as a first-party studio, and you would expect the ports to be at least on par, if not better than the PlayStation versions, especially in this case where there's like a year between them.
Yeah.
That should have been a year of time spent making the game better.
My hope,
users.
frankly, was that they would fix some of the issues from PlayStation 5 that John and Alex observed last year. And if anything, it's gone in the opposite direction. So it's a little bit of a weird situation because the same studio, Tango Gameworks, also did Hi-Fi Rush earlier this year, which I took a look at, which this game has 10 modes, by the way. Ghostwire Tokyo has 10 modes of PlayStation 5 and Series X. Hi-Fi Rush has 1 mode. It runs at perfect 60 FPS. No input latency, no issues whatsoever. And it's like a clean, smooth, super polished experience from start to finish. And it's like, how could the same studio produce 2 wildly different efforts with incredibly different performance profiles? It's just baffling to me.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, of course, is when you have all of these different modes, the QA effort multiplies significantly because in theory, all of them should be tested to ensure that they produce a good experience, right? So I'd much rather prefer that level of curation rather than this kind of Wild West approach to modes, which is just kind of baffling.
Well, I would really quibble with that because 2 of them even run without VSync. So
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. They don't need those. I don't know.
Wow. Any final thoughts from you on this one, Alex? I guess at this point, we've just had this tweet going out basically saying, hey, no 60 FPS at launch, guys. And we've got no context whatsoever. It is at this point kind of like wait and see, right? But the The messaging isn't great, is it?
No, it isn't. And I did see a really nice post from Jez Corden the other week about kind of like expectation management as like a kind of PR strategy from Microsoft. And it was kind of hit the point where like I'm thinking back about how Halo Infinite went down, about how, you know, almost the entire first part of this Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S generation is gone, where titles don't show up. There's like just an incredible lack of like console exclusive Xbox titles. There's been more releases on PC, it feels like. Where it feels like this generation hasn't started very well for Microsoft, and they are just trying to get it going finally, but it's just still not up and running yet. And my goodness, it kind of does suck if you're just sitting there with an Xbox Series X or Series S waiting for like the great, cool Xbox exclusive games to come. And it's like, well, you just got to wait more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very disappointing. Obviously, we'll be following up on this as and when the situation changes and as and when we get the game. I guess we can move on to the next news topic now. We'll cover this one quite quickly because I guess we've already discussed it in a past DF Weekly. It's now official, though. The Suicide Squad killed the Justice League game from Rocksteady. Jason Schreier a while back reported that the game has been delayed. This has now been officially confirmed. I guess the big surprise here is that it's been delayed to 2024. So, you know, we've got a lot of time left in development now. Let's go straight to some supporter questions on this. Who the hell am I says, Suicide Squad was just delayed to Feb 24. Just curious on everyone's quick thoughts. Do you think this will give it enough time to fix some of the complaints that people have with the game? Even with a 10-month delay, I doubt they can change the gameplay in a significant way, but maybe they can tweak the way the progression works and completely remove any and all live service elements. This one from Thomas Trahler. Hey DF, exclamation point. It was just announced that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was delayed until Feb 24. I know it was discussed in a previous DF Weekly that it seemed too close to completion for a complete rework. But now with this delay, thoughts? Do you think they are completely removing the games as a service feature and going back to the drawing board? Alex, they can't go back to the drawing board. Can they? They can mitigate some of the most egregious elements of games as a service, but yeah, the gameplay is baked in. This game's been in development for like, I don't know, 7-8 years.
Yeah, it will be 8 years, I think, by the time that it would release, should it release in February 2024. I think they can get rid of the outward-facing games as a service things that we saw in there. And I think that they could actually, for example, they showed like, when they showed, I don't know what they called it, like the loot score. I don't know what it was called, but when they showed that screen with all these different data points, and it said like DPS, rate of fire, I don't know, all these other things, they could almost actually simplify that all into a system that is less games as a service and more hidden from the user, and maybe actually a lot of these like different effects from weapons and the different skins that give you DPS bonuses, they can actually technically get rid of all that. But the core gameplay of like how it was structured, the entire game built around it, like which we haven't seen yet. We actually still don't. We just saw like a mission and then them talking about it. We still actually don't know about like the core rest of the game. Like, you start off in an area and then do you wander around areas finding enemies, or do you go on missions to find things, or like how does this exactly work? I don't think they can change that at all yet. That would require remaking the game, right? So I think there's things they can do to make it better, but I think the stink of GAAS will still like drive like what you see visually happening on screen all the time. It's a sad situation, but I think they can change some things to make it better. But do people want that game? I don't know.
Well, Schreier has weighed in with a couple of more tweets. 9 months is not enough to completely change the nature of the game. The team was told the delay was for polish and not related to the February gameplay showcase. Lots of other factors can affect release timing. And polish can mean lots of things, from performance optimization to balance tweaks to bugs to server stability. Folks are surprised a dev would take an extra 9 months to polish a game, but that's actually normal these days. Oliver, any extra additional thoughts?
Yeah, my first thought was that they would be delaying the game, especially because some of the earlier reporting had suggested they were delaying the game to address some of those complaints. But yeah, I saw the Schreier tweets, and I suppose that sort of indicates that maybe that's not the case. Just for polish, which, hey, 10 extra months of polish, I suppose that might be worth it if the game is in a really troubled state, even after, I think, 2 years of delays so far. But what really stands out to me is that Batman Arkham Knight was, I think, released in June 2015. This is getting released in February 2024. So that's almost 9 years. So
yeah, wow, 9
expectations have to be mammoth for this game at this point. I just hope that the original game concept, which seems to have been developed around this games as a service concept that was very popular around the time that the game was being initially developed, I hope that isn't too prominent in the final game, even if it's too late to rework it to be more of like a purely solo adventure or something that people might like. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's worth stressing this decision would not have been taken lightly. So, if you consider the size of the development team that's going to be behind this game, and then multiply all of those wages by 10 months, that's, adding an extra significant chunk of budget to the game. This isn't going to be a decision that's taken lightly. But again, we've seen so little of the game. But what we have seen, specifically the gradually diminishing energy bars, it doesn't really fill you with a lot of joy, does it? But again, we just have to wait and see what's going to happen here. But we've got a long time to wait, seemingly, until we actually get our hands on the game. Let's move on to the next news topic. So this week, CD Projekt Red, in partnership with NVIDIA, released Cyberpunk 2077 RT Overdrive. Oh, wow, where do we begin with this one? The first AAA game, not just any AAA game, but one of the most demanding, has received a full path tracing upgrade. We've put out some content already, a preview and a kind of tour of Night City, just to show how cool it can look. Alex, your content's slightly delayed owing to your illness. I guess a couple of questions for me, first of all, which is, what do you think the overall reaction has been to it? Does it make you excited? Do you think people are really into this?
So yeah, wow.
And I guess the other question is, is this the future of games?
So I like this because it's probably I put out videos about different ray tracing stuff semi-regularly, depending upon what they are. And the last couple ones where it's been about like, oh, this game has gotten a pretty substantial ray tracing upgrade or change or user mod. There's always like 50% of the comments are like, Alex is ruining PC gaming.
Again? You've already ruined retro PC gaming.
I've already, yeah, something like that. So ray tracing is ruining PC gaming, something like that. But this time around, along with, I would say, Metro Exodus, enhanced and, well, a little bit control back in the day was where the overwhelming user response based on, I check subreddits, I check YouTube comments. I read a lot of everything that is written about our work. It was extremely overwhelmingly positive. People immediately saw what the incredible benefits of doing a good majority of the lighting through like a path trace system does to the game. I think it's intuitively obvious to the most casual observer. You just like look at it. It's like, looks a lot better. And I think that's what a lot of people saw in the video, even though it was only 10 minutes long, essentially. People saw that and they just went like, oh, I get it now. This is what ray tracing does to a game. And so I think it's really great to finally see in such big numbers the videos, both the videos that John and I myself put out here. With my video had assistance also from John in it, because the B-roll in my video was from John. Were just, they've done really well. So it's just showing that people are super excited about this. I've also read online from people who've just gone out and played it, that they're loving that they can even run it on their PC, even if they don't have an RTX 4000 series GPU necessarily. And that's, it's kind of like a Crisis situation where there was also, back when Crisis came out, a lot of people very angry at the game for running the way it did, which is weird. But there was also a lot of people being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing this in front of my eyes. A game that looks like it was made in the future. And that's kind of what Cyberpunk is. It is representing a future vision for how AAA games are going to be lit. And that's what you can see right now on your PC in a preview form. And it's really darn cool. The second question, wow. Is this the shape of things to come? And I would say yes, like nth degree goal, yes. I think it's hard to say like what exact power will be there in the PlayStation 6 or Xbox Series Next. But I would hope that at least a good majority of the lighting pipeline by that point in time, that AMD has, ramped up their ray tracing acceleration to be a lot better than it currently is. And then their mid-spec GPUs by that time can keep up with this. But I would hope that's what we get, a certain level. I would really hope we're getting there. But for the midterm, before we see something like a PlayStation 6 or Xbox Series Next, I think this is NVIDIA's kind of path towards the future, where they've been creating this technology. It's really currently only at all possible on PCs, and they want to ramp it up and advertise towards developers. Actually, we have the ability to insert this lighting in your game. Here's our test bed of Cyberpunk, how we did it with Cyberpunk. Here's Unreal Engine 5, where you can do the exact same thing in Unreal Engine 5. I think this is what NVIDIA would like to see happening in a lot of PC games, and I personally would also like to see happening, where there's a mode that ships for consoles, and it's like, let's say Lumen. And then on the PC version, you get path trace lighting, which is a nice big upgrade actually from Lumen. So that's how I kind of see how this is right now.
Oliver, what do you make of this?
Oh, yeah. I was just playing right before this. I played like a good hour of Cyberpunk, maxed out on my 4090. And that is an intense experience. My big takeaway from it, just number one, is that everything looks so consistent with that path trace lighting. Like, you don't see any of the compromises that typify modern games, and especially modern open world games that can't rely super heavily on really high quality baked lighting. And you just get outstanding lighting basically regardless of the circumstance, indirect, direct, reflective, whatever. It's fantastic. And it actually runs, I was very surprised, and actually I think Rich got some footage of this. It actually runs at very playable frame rates on a very wide range of at least NVIDIA graphics hardware. Like, you don't need a 4080 or 4090.
Yeah, there's a mod that makes life a lot easier. It reduces ray bounce and range. Yeah, but that is basically something that I would expect to see in the final game. This is a technology preview, because we did see it in Portal RTX, right? Scalability in terms of how the path tracing actually works. And yes, as you can see here, we've got footage of Cyberpunk running locked 1080p 30 on the weakest ass RTX card on the market, the RTX 3050, which it's not looking great, but the point is it's running at a playable frame rate. 1080p 30, pretty consistently locked there. So there is actually scalability in this whole approach. But I think right now it's in technology preview status, and it's all about, to put it brutally, trying to sell new GPUs. That's what it's all about. But yeah, I'm really excited about it.
I think it shows that ray tracing is extremely scalable, and especially when you combine it with upsampling technologies, it can be pushed pretty far. And right now, like on pretty mid-range NVIDIA GPU hardware, like what I would think of as mid-range, maybe other people wouldn't, but like a 3060 or 3070, it runs pretty well. On my 4090, I'm getting like 100 frames per second with frame gen, just it's awesome. Pretty impressive achievement. And I do wonder if this is a sort of ray tracing enhancement that we'll see in the future. It seemed like a lot of work, but if this is the kind of thing that's actually feasible for major upcoming titles that really want to push the boundaries on PC, then it'd be very hard to not want to play those games exclusively on PC, because this is such an incredible technology demonstration. It really just shows the incredible advantages you get when you have a computer with many teraflops of ray tracing capability.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think we can basically assume that NVIDIA is eyeing the path tracing part of Unreal Engine 5 next for integration of this technology, because it just opens the door to so many more games supporting it. So yeah, I do think it is the beginning of something special here. But let's take a couple of quick supporter questions on it. This one from Selwyn Niples. Hey DFers! Exclamation point. With so many games that feature RT being heavy on the CPU, I was afraid that RT Overdrive would cause CPU bottlenecks too. However, it does not seem too bad. Does this mean happy days for the future of path tracing and no more CPU struggles? Well, this is an interesting question generally, Alex, right? Because, not only is it relatively light on the CPU, it runs fine on 8GB VRAM GPUs.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about, if you think about it, path tracing or ray tracing in general is you don't need, so when you're shadow map, you have just let's say an 8096 by 8096 shadow map cascade, and then you have all the different cascades going down. Yeah, that's a certain amount of stuff that goes into texture memory. You don't necessarily have these kind of large, big texture atlas things from ray tracing. It can actually be less memory intensive than standard raster stuff. It's also one reason why back in the day when there was presentations from Epic, they were saying you can get a lot better performance out of ray trace shadows scaling to have many objects with shadows and things like that than you would get doing that with shadow maps. There's just, Oliver said it, ray tracing scales really in an interesting way where it can go really, really high, but it also, it doesn't if you were to constantly triple, quadruple, eightfold multiply things on the rasterization side, it gets increasingly extremely heavy to do those kind of things for diminishing returns. So that's why it's really cool. On the CPU side of things that I really like about this is that the original game, they had some presentations on this that were done, I think at some sort of developer event in China. I don't recall, but they basically already said for the original ray tracing that was in the game before they added an overdrive, the BVH structure already included in any view you would look the entire city. It always had the entire city in the BVH actually for the original game. But the thing is, so if you'd look in a reflection, you'd always see the most distant building. But the things that weren't always necessarily in the BVH the entire way would be civilians, cars, or tiny little scattered objects necessarily that would already be LOD'd out of the way. So those things wouldn't be there. So you're kind of seeing right now, they're just retracing against that same BVH that they had before, maybe with some additions. I really wouldn't know. But it should be still actually almost just the same amount of heaviness as it was before on the CPU. I would love to test that now, actually, to see the exact number difference, but I don't think it's going to be very big, actually.
Okay, fair enough. Let's just take this question from Captain Rainbow. Loving the new RT Overdrive mode for Cyberpunk, but just like Portal RTX, I can't help but notice the shimmering and ghosting caused by the low ray count and denoising of real-time path tracing. After screen space effects and rasterized lighting limits, is that the next thing we'll be picky about? Will future graphics card selling points be less noisy path tracing?
So it's not. So ghosting and shimmering are going to be two different things, because one, you'll get shimmer if you're being, how do you say it, not aggressive with how many temporal samples you're using. So if you were to let it settle and let it temporally accumulate over time, you don't get shimmer. But then if you move, you get ghosting because you let it temporarily accumulate too long. So the thing is, in the future, much like DLSS, is to apply a neural weighting here and say, okay, this is when we accumulate more, this is when we accumulate less. And currently it's done by hand-tuned heuristics, usually. This is how you say, this is when we're doing it. It's done for TAA. It's done for also the denoisers. NVIDIA, obviously, and Intel are pushing super heavily into any AI stuff. And that's what they really want to do. And they've already showcased a couple of neural denoisers, both of them. But the one thing that's really interesting and that applies super heavily to Cyberpunk and any sort of NVIDIA sponsored RT title in the future is that they want to push for neural radiance cache, which is basically the game right now uses Restir, but it doesn't actually, other than the screen space cache from Restir, it doesn't actually cache into the world. You'll see other games for performance reasons do a lot of world space caching or screen space caching or volumetric caching, whatever. This game, Cyberpunk, currently doesn't do that. If they used a neural radiance cache like here, one of the cool benefits of that from the research that they've shown off is that it has like super quick like response time, because it's not actually resampling at that point. It's just like inferring samples. So it can turn them off immediately. And it makes it so that you don't actually see like delay usually. So that would impact things like ghosting and would impact the fact like you can turn off sometimes lights in games with ray tracing and you can see them take like upwards of like 30 frames into 60 frames per second before they start to cool and turn off actually in like the indirect lighting. This is something that I'm super excited about in the future and really cool. And they even mentioned it to us that they want to implement it in Cyberpunk at some point. So the future is actually really bright. And I don't think it necessarily will require new GPUs. It would just require more of our current GPUs because that's another AI step to run there. So ray tracing is so exciting, man. It's like so much more interesting than all the other stuff we usually cover. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know where to begin with this because it's not so much the scale of the achievement, as impressive as it is, but the time scale that it's been achieved in. I mean, it wasn't, just a couple of weeks ago that we were talking about, Quake 1 getting a path traced upgrade and the original Half-Life getting a path traced upgrade, and here we are with Cyberpunk 2077. And just to emphasize the scale of that,
it's huge.
That acceleration. I remember being at 2019 at E3 and also at the AMD RDNA 1 launch. And AMD's strategy was, essentially, okay, you don't need ray tracing right now. It's, it just can't be done properly. And, they've envisaged a far-flung future where it would actually be a cloud thing. Mm-hmm. And, but, the acceleration of adoption, I think has been, and it has been driven by NVIDIA for obvious reasons. They've doubled down on the hardware, right? But here we are, and it's looking absolutely incredible. The question is, in terms of this far-flung future, let's say we're looking at new consoles in 2028. Will we be looking at something like this? It's difficult to tell. All I can really say is that we didn't really anticipate RT hardware to be in this generation of consoles when we were projecting back in the day. So, behind the scenes, there's certainly an impetus to do more with ray tracing, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor here. This is the antithesis. I mean, last week or the week before, we were complaining about, half-assed RT implementations being bolted onto games. But this is like the real deal. It's pretty astonishing. Let's move on to the next news topic. So we've had the third and final reveal trailer for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I watched it this morning. Incredible piece of editing, I thought. Mm-hmm. Some fantastic custom camera angles. Great look at some of the gameplay in there. It's just looking, and I also think the other thing to point out is that they showed fantastic stuff that was completely removed from the previous trailer, which was much more about the systems and stuff like that. Oliver, I'm going to come to you on this one first. This is shaping up to be something special, but the question is it too big for Switch?
Well, I think we can say it's not too big for Switch. Just right off the top, I thought it was interesting and a little bit weird that we've had to wait this long for like a nice, proper cinematic trailer that actually showed a wide range of the game. Because the stuff we've seen earlier was like really brief, really fleeting, or like that extended 10-minute gameplay showcase from a couple of weeks ago, which didn't really show off that much of the game, but was very detailed. In terms of the too big for Switch, you know, I mean, it looks very consistent with Breath of the Wild. It's basically the big takeaway for me. There's lots of shadow aliasing, lots of geometric aliasing. I actually counted out a few shots from the gameplay demo a couple weeks ago, and it counted out at 900p with no AA or very minimal AA, which is the same as Breath of the Wild. Along with, in this one, there were some cutscenes that looked like they might be pre-rendered, didn't have aliasing, but that was also true in Breath of the Wild. There were some pre-rendered cutscenes there. Generally speaking, I think we're looking at similar technology. The scale continues to impress, though, and I did notice that even though it's using the same world, that there are some differences. So, like, there's some geometric differences in the actual world construction and design. There's some different rocky outcroppings. There's no shrines anymore, but they're like these little weird kind of triangular things with swirly green stuff on them that I have to presume are the shrine replacements. Also, there's a shot of Hiteno Village, which looks a little bit different, like different buildings and stuff like that. The actual basic kind of world sculpting is pretty similar, but I think people, from what I can see in this, it's going to be actually pretty different in terms of the particulars of actually what's decorating that world and how it's laid out. So, and obviously you've got all the stuff in the sky as well. So I thought that was interesting, but yeah, it's basically Breath of the Wild in terms of the technology as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on this one, Alex?
I'm just excited to see the game come out. I don't, like Oliver, I thought like the original trailer they showed off, it looked like super clean in a lot of areas, but maybe looking back on it now, maybe they were just like Oliver said, they didn't actually show off too much of the game. So maybe in those areas it is looking super sharp and clean because they're avoiding a lot of things that you could be like, look at all that shadow aliasing in the background. So maybe that's what was too big for Switch. It was our dreams.
Dreams.
Dreams is let's not talk about that. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. I don't know. I think, when does it come out? Actually, the release date.
It's out in May. It's not so far away.
Not so far away.
We're looking at Final Code, essentially.
Yeah, we're looking at Final Code. Then I'm curious to see exactly how it stacks up against the original game, because if it is using a lot of the same map, I'm curious if it's like Far Cry different, where they do that exact same thing there, or if it's actually like, wow, they've changed quite a bit here.
Only time will tell, Alex.
Yeah.
But we're all hugely excited about this one. But that's the end of the news for this week. Let's move on to Supporter Q&A. It's the part of the show where every week we put out a call to questions to our supporters on Patreon. They offer up anything up to 50 to 60 questions. We choose the ones that we're best equipped to answer, or the ones that might provoke amusement, or wind up John, but he's not here, or Alex who is. So let's get straight into it. This one from Jake Richardson. Hello, DF! Forgive my lack of brevity, but I joined the Patreon today after feeling compelled to weigh in on Redfall's 30 FPS cap. Personally, the discourse around this and Gotham Knights has been incredibly disheartening as somebody who has always loved the filmic look that 30 FPS can achieve. I believe video games are art and developers should have the freedom to make artistic choices regarding visuals and performance. I can't help but feel that the quote for an eventual quote-unquote that the call for an eventual quote-unquote 60 FPS minimum on all console games diminishes gaming as an art form and does a disservice to decades of wonderful gaming history. What do you think? What do you think, Oliver?
I think, to me, that absolutely there are some games that do work really well at 30 FPS and that are built for 30 FPS and that have visuals to match. And not to be mean, I think Redfall looks good. I don't think it looks like a 30 FPS barnstormer that's really pushing out technology in any super compelling ways.
I think at this point it's been confirmed. I mean, if we're talking about developer intent, all of the marketing material was 60 frames per second, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it applies in this case.
And then with respect to Redfall in particular, it's a first-person shooter that has like some multiplayer co-op elements. I don't really think that's a great place for a 30 FPS game to be in 2023. I think the comparison, with Gotham Knights, bring Gotham Knights into it, is interesting as well. Because like Alex said earlier, Gotham Knights had some serious CPU issues when it came out. And that, over time, did get basically solved to a good degree. It's still not 100% where I want it to be, but like on PC now, as me and Alex covered in a video last month, it's actually in a pretty decent place. It's in a much better place, certainly on consoles, than it was at launch. So hopefully we can see a similar improvement. But to me, I think there is absolutely a place for 30 FPS games on consoles. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of them. I think what A Plague Tale Requiem did on consoles with 30 and 40 FPS back some months ago, I think that was terrific. I think we're going to see a lot of really exciting 30 FPS titles, especially ones that use lots of UE5 features and things like that. I don't think that a semi-competitive first-person shooter is the place for that. That's just using UE4 with no ray tracing. That's my opinion, but I think there is a place for it for sure.
So the concept of a 30 FPS aesthetic, Alex, it would not go down well with the PC audience, would it?
Well, I just want to take issue that 30 FPS is filmic, because films are not 30 FPS. Maybe TV movies are, but film is usually 24 FPS, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a different film where they filmed it. Film is a lot of things.
It's usually 24 frames per second, though, and TV shows are usually 24 as well.
Well,
apart from
unless the
live
comedies are usually 30.
Yeah. The one thing that I want to take issue with is because also in film, it's not just 24. It's not always actually just 24 FPS. Some filmmakers do change the frame rate of the camera per scene, and they also change the internal frame rate of the camera per scene for when they do things like slow motion, and they also adjust the shutter speed. Who can watch Saving Private Ryan and not remember the initial opening moment and think about why does that look so dang chaotic? It's the motion blur is cut so hard on that. It just looks so framey, and you can almost not focus on anything. And in a game, when you're doing that at 30 FPS, it doesn't, to me, it still doesn't look like a film, because motion blur in film is not like a blurred sample smeared and then you kind of fake the background. It's actually a sample, infinite sample over time, and you just kind of actually can still see the background movement through the whole arc. And our motion blur still doesn't look like that to me in games, and I still don't think it looks filmic. So I do want to I don't think the filmic aesthetic in games is even there yet, to say that this is artistic intent. And I think John has always put this out really great on Twitter when people have said oh yeah, I've tried playing a game at 24 FPS. It looked like a film, but oh my gosh, have you ever tried playing a game at 24 FPS? The input latency is intense, to say the least.
Yeah, basically, the lower your frame rate, the more exponentially larger the input lag becomes.
It's huge.
And it actually requires a huge amount of engineering effort to make a 30 FPS game deliver end-to-end lag that's below 100 milliseconds.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I don't feel like we should, as a medium, I mean, you can do whatever you want with this medium, but I feel like the medium strengths are in saying what we can do in a unique way. And I don't think just looking towards film is the aesthetic that should always be achieved. I think looking for other aesthetics and that could happen at any frame rate above 24, 30, 60 FPS is something that we should also applaud, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to the next question. This one from Dennis Lofgren. Hey DF crew, ! What's going on with HDMI 2.1 capture cards? We're in the third year of the new consoles and still no way to truly capture everything they can do. From my research, I found one from EVGA capable of parts of HDMI 2.1. I've not heard that. I'm going to take a look at that now, but not 4K 120 hertz.
Oh.
I'm guessing you guys are following this space pretty closely, so what's taking so long? Are there technical limitations keeping these devices from being made? Does YouTube/Twitch need to introduce 120 hertz for it to make sense? Keep up your incredible work. I think there's two things here. Number one, the bandwidth requirement to stream 4K at 120 hertz is quite significant. I think you're probably looking at a raw bandwidth in around 2 gigabytes a second. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to carry off. And secondly, there is the application of what happens if once you've got that, you'll need an encoder chip that can encode 4K at 120 hertz to make it viable, really, as a capture device. Typically, they offer compressed inputs as well as uncompressed. So that's another aspect of it. I think there was one from a Chinese manufacturer, an OEM, that I contacted, and they were looking to get it out this year, but so far there's not been any movement on that. It would be great for our work, but I think Dennis also raises the question of, how are you actually going to deliver that content at the end of the day? If YouTube and Switch aren't supporting 120 hertz anyway, then, there's a question of asking, what's the point? It can't be a hardware product that's designed because Digital Foundry needs it, much as we'd like that to be the case. So there's a lot of points to this. And the other thing, of course, is that if YouTube/Twitch did introduce 120 hertz, I doubt they'd be able to do it at 4K, in which case the existing capture cards that do 1440p 120 are kind of perfectly adequate. So there's kind of like a perfect storm of reasons not to produce one of these cards: the engineering effort and the application. So it's annoying, right, Alex? Because the DLSS3 project was immensely challenging because we didn't have a 4K 120 hertz
it was
capture card.
It was a big downer. It's kind of where there's another aspect of this beyond that all the things you mentioned, Rich, is I just thought about it a few weeks ago when I was talking on our internal Discord, the PC community there, and they were mentioning, I forget who I was talking with, but another thing that also is limiting here is PCIe bandwidth, where currently right now, like in one of our workstation PCs, you're like right on the edge of how much PCIe bandwidth you would have in like a PCIe 4.0 system. And like, there's only so many PCIe lanes that are shipped on modern motherboards with modern CPUs. And at some point, you're actually reaching the limit of those things, depending upon how many add-in cards you have. And like a workstation has usually a number. So it's another thing where, like, even if we have one right now, I don't know if I'd actually even I'd have to get an entirely new PCIe 5.0 workstation to even use it, probably. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that beforehand, but now I realize it. So, yeah, there's so many things in the way here. I don't know. What do you think, Oliver? Would you want one right now, or are you fine?
Well, you want 4K 120, Oliver, because the pixel count's on 120 hertz mode.
Oh, right. Yeah,
well,
that would be easy.
Yeah.
Do you?
For consoles, I think it's a lot less demanding, because 1440p 120 is fine for almost all uses. I did a Gran Turismo video recently and captured it, 1440p 120, and it actually doesn't go above 1440p in its high frame rate mode. So
luckily,
no issues there. And even if it did, I mean, the quality loss is going to be negligible in a lot of cases. It would be really helpful for pixel counting. There's a workaround by using system level screenshots, but it's sort of a pain. You can't really get the kind of consistent counts you'd like to get. And in some cases, it's basically impossible to count. But so on our side, it's outside of the technical limitations, it would be nice to have. But for me, it's not like a must have. And certainly I don't really want to go upgrading my capture PC just for those side cases, if that is indeed the case. But the other half of it, of course, is delivery. And I don't know that YouTube is going to do 120 hertz at 4K anytime soon. I don't think that users are equipped for it in terms of their displays. I don't think the apps are equipped for it. And I don't think that YouTube is in a position to offer the bandwidth needed. And actually, if you remember, Rich, a few months ago, they were trialing, I think, limiting users who didn't pay for YouTube Premium to 1080p 60.
Yes.
Which we had a problem with that, obviously. But 4K 60, I think, is sort of like, it's not a bad place to be, considering what the alternatives are, right?
Yeah, I agree entirely. Let's move on to the next question. This one from Jesus? I don't know. Anyway, the question is, hello DF, about industry terms. When you receive code, are you talking about literal source code, or are there game codes for stores? In any case, where does the term originate? Also, using the words title to refer to games, it always puzzled me. Yeah, I think both of these things are kind of like industry terms. perhaps a bit inside baseball. If we're talking about receiving code, we don't receive the literal source code. So for example, Dead Island 2 turned up yesterday, and I put on the Slack channel, Dead Island 2 code is in. It's not as if we've received the source code of Dead Island 2. I don't know what we'd do with it, to be honest. It's basically industry term for, the deliverables we get. It can be preview footage, it can be B-roll, it can be preview code, it can be review code. Code is typically a packaged up game that we either receive physically or much more often digitally. So we aren't receiving actual source code there. That's pretty awesome. Also referring to the word title to refer to games. Again, there's two reasons for that. First of all, yes, it's how developers and publishers refer to games, their titles. And secondly, when you're a journalist and you're talking about games all the time, you actually kind of need a different term to make sure that the copy doesn't repeat itself over and over again. So it's just a nice way to talk about things. Game patches are title updates. Yeah, but this is perhaps indicative of accessibility in terms of us as journalists in talking to the end user, because there is a lot of these industry level terms that we kind of just throw about without a second thought, when it's obviously causing some level of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything more to add to that, but let's move on to the next question, then the final question from Luke. Since Steam Deck is also a relevant console by now, will you also cover it, at least from time to time? I think the answer's yes there, Oliver, right?
Yeah, I have a video sort of in the works covering the demanding titles of Q1, but the release schedule right now, especially with John away for a short period on vacation, it's pretty intense. So maybe when the release schedule calms down in a couple weeks, I can take a look at it. But yeah, Steam Deck's always on my mind. I love covering Steam Deck. I use my Steam Deck all the time. I love portable console-like devices, and I think the Steam Deck is really interesting to cover because you don't often see a place for what is functionally very low-spec PC hardware that people are actually interested in. So that creates a lot of interest, and obviously Valve has done a tremendous job with the system-level features. So yeah, for sure. I mean, there will be more Steam Deck coverage on the channel. It just... sometimes the release schedule catches up on you, and all of a sudden we're flooded with stuff that we need to cover. So it's to go by the wayside.
Yeah, Alex, what I really love about the Steam Deck is basically the shifting of focus back to low-end hardware and the implications that has for low-end hardware across the entire PC ecosystem. So to put this into perspective, the RTX 4070 review, I went back through all of the prior 70 class cards, and it was too late to go into the video, but I also benchmarked the GTX 1070, and at 1080p resolution, ultra settings, it's still all right. And I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, the new cards are anything up to like 3 times faster. It's like 6 times faster if you're using frame generation.
Oh my!
But if you weren't using ultra settings, the 1070 is still capable of 1080p gaming.
It was great. It was like an Xbox One X, so it's in that case, it does make a lot of sense that it was so good. And I used the one also, I think, for up until I replaced it with an RTX 2080 Ti for the larger PC I use in reviews. At that point in time, I used the GTX 1070 as well for, I think, almost the first year almost of reviewing. I had just a little bit under a year, which was really fun. It's coming to Steam Deck? What?
Yeah, let's talk about Steam Deck, because it doesn't excite you, really, does it? It intrigues you, but... You don't use it day in, day out.
I don't use it day in, day out because I just don't. I'm like a rituals person, I guess, in regards to how I play. I like sitting at a spot. I don't think about using a thing while I sit on a couch or whatever, or going outside. I just don't think about playing games at those times. So that's probably why it's less for me. But at the same time, I think one thing I would also like to see, and maybe this requires collaboration, is that we can sometimes have the PC version of our video comes out covering the PC version, but then the next day we have Steam Deck video or something like that. That's something that I would really like to see happen occasionally. because I think even though optimized settings scale down, usually like the reason why I make optimized settings is because they are the ones that scale down really well across all, and they're just like the good settings you want. But Steam Deck is low power enough where it requires ultra optimized settings in some cases. So I would like to have that almost sometimes be a separate video in this future world.
The other thing is the screen is smaller, so the concept of what is optimal in terms of bang for the buck changes quite significantly.
Super.
You can run Marvel Spider-Man, flat medium settings, and it still looks really good on the Steam Deck. So yeah, there is that contention as well. I'm just really interested in handheld PC gaming. It's just an area that's expanding rapidly, and I was also heartened to see this week story from Tom Warren from The Verge talking about how Microsoft are looking into producing a dare I say it, bespoke front end for Windows that would actually work really nicely on a handheld. And I've just received the Ioneo Air Plus. This is the standard Air. And the Plus basically puts a 6800U into this form factor.
Oh my goodness!
Which would be, it's designed essentially for 15 watts, which puts it in the region of Steam Deck, but in a form factor like this. Plus, you have the option to go to 22 watts, which adds like 40% performance, but obviously with a hit to battery life. But I'm going to be checking that out. But I just think this whole idea of handheld PC gaming, I love it for a number of things. First of all, because it's taking PC gaming out of the office, out of the bedroom, anywhere, which I think is very liberating for the platform. And secondly, it does make developers think twice about scalability, right? The idea that you can get a good experience on lower end hardware, and bearing in mind that the prices of new GPUs and basically everything is shot up. That's a good thing. But more Steam Deck coverage. I think we can accommodate that in due course. But that's it. That's the final question, and therefore the end of the show. So please do like, subscribe, share if you enjoyed this particular direct. Ring the bell for those notionally instant notifications. I'm still not getting notifications from that channel that I have been subscribed to, which is on the one hand great, but on the other hand, it is notional. DF Sports Program, join us for the ability to talk to the team directly, join this amazing community, get early access to a ton of great content, bonus material, amazing DF Retro stuff. It's their place to be. But that's all from us for this week. Thanks for watching.